Okay, so Guten Morgen, and today I want to make some things really clear. I want to add some clarity to how the Maurice Bishop International Airport came into being, okay? The birth of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. All right, and first I want to give you a little background so you can be clear and understand certain things. Now, capital projects of that nature is never ever done by one person, obviously not, and it's never done by one company or one entity. The reason being is that one entity is not going to specialize in all the different aspects of the project, okay? So you may have a lead contractor or you may have a lead designer on the project, but there'll be a collaborative effort by many different companies, many different entities in order for that project to come to fruition. And that just makes sense. That is something that is obvious, okay? It's like, for example, when we were doing the Fulton Street Transit Center in Lower Manhattan and the whole facilitation of East-West Crossing in Lower Manhattan, we had about 15 different companies working on that project, okay? Now, an English company called Arup, A-R-U-P, they were the actual lead designers on the project, okay? And we all were in a building on 6th Avenue and actually in a part of Manhattan called Soho. And so you had major companies there. You had companies like Musa Rutledge, those are the guys that did the foundations back in the days for the first World Trade Center. You had architects, Lee Harris Palmer. You had Daniel Frankfurt. You had the guys who did the sanitary stuff, Voma. So you had tons. I mean, you had Naik Prasad. These are the guys that did the survey. You had some environmental guys that did the environmental stuff from Jersey. So the point I'm making is that you had tons of different companies doing different things. This is how these project works. So I say all of this to illustrate that it wasn't any different with the airport, okay? This is something that I'm talking about over 20 years ago. And at that time, the company that I'm working with, we were actually doing the structural sub-consultant stuff, okay? So while Grenada will be eternally grateful to the Cubans for having made contributions to the building of the airport, I want you to understand that it was a collaborative effort, okay? There is financing, there is construction, there is design. So let's start from the beginning, okay? Initially, this airport was proposed by the British when Grenada was a British colony. Okay, in 1954. They proposed it, but nothing was done about it, okay? Then the actual design of the airport was done by the Canadians, okay? They did the design for the airport, okay? And if you understand a little about how this works, if you do a design for a project, generally, and it makes sense, you would be involved during the construction by providing what is called construction support services, okay? So if there's any issue with the design, if there's any discrepancy and the contractor does not understand things on the design, then they would coordinate with the original designers, okay, to clarify those things, all right? So it means that the Canadians would have been involved towards the end of that project, okay, because they did the original design. All right, so that's that. Now, there were several people that contributed to the design, financing, development and building of the airport, okay? So I'm going to call some of the parties that were involved, okay? You had Mexico, you had Venezuela, you had Algeria, you had Libya. So there were several parties that were involved in the actual final development of that airport, okay? The Libyans, okay, and the Algerians provided some of the financing towards that project, okay? A matter of fact, and this is interesting, even when this was being built, and the United States and Grenada did not necessarily had the best of relationships, there was a company from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, that actually did the dredging, okay, and filling work at the airport, okay? An American company did the dredging and filling work at the airport. And of course, once the invasion of October 25th, 1983 occurred, of course, the Cubans were out of Grenada and the project had to be finished. So the United States contributed 19 million US dollars towards finishing that project, okay? So we see, especially in recent times, an attempt in many respects to rewrite the history of Grenada and to rewrite certain things about Grenada. And that is actually a dangerous thing. And most of the time, it is done to fulfill some political narrative. But really and truly, it's actually an injustice that is being done to all the people that work so hard to contribute to actually the final development of the Maurice Bishop International Airport. Okay? So those days of propaganda, misrepresentation, and attempting to rewrite history are over. Okay? Because we are going to clarify these things when you come with your propaganda, okay, and your misrepresentation, okay, we will challenge it. So there you have it. The bottom line is, the Grenada Maurice Bishop International Airport was a collaborative effort by many individuals, entities, nations, and companies. Okay? So, guten Tag. Ich hoffe, Sie haben einen schönen Samstag.